All right, everybody, welcome back to Off the Grid on the Record, where we go beyond the headlines and into the real world talk of building a cleaner, more sustainable future. Today, we're talking about something every homeowner or business thinking about solar needs to hear, and it's how to navigate the noise. Our guest today is Corey McDonald, founder of MC Solar Consultants, a Kansas City-based firm with a refreshingly rare mission, and it's to advocate for the solar consumer, not the installer. So, Corey brings over 25 years of experience in the industry and has built a consultancy that cuts through confusion, misleading sales tactics, and poor fit systems to help families, school districts, and commercial property owners make informed, confident decisions about solar. So, whether you're an energy advocate, a frustrated buyer, or a builder trying to earn trust in a saturated market, this episode will be packed with clarity for you. So, Corey, welcome to the show. Happy to have you here.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Exactly. No, we all are. It's there's some interesting stuff that I want to get into, and you have a very, very interesting perspective. So, if you don't mind, I kind of want to just jump into it. It's you've had a great story, so I kind of want to start with at the start with the founding story. You know what I mean? You have 25 years in solar. What made you decide to build MC Solar Consultants? What gap were you necessarily aiming to fill?
Well, it's a long story, but I'll make it as short as I can.
Elevator
Uh,
pitch me.
Back in the late '90s, actually, I was in a snowstorm and I almost got into a really bad accident going into a intersection. So I tried to figure out a way to eliminate snow and ice from forming on pavement. And as I was coming up with concepts, I needed a power source because I was going to put them on small bridges.
Mm-hmm.
And the power source was solar. So departments of transportation were, well, actually, let's back up. I got a patent for it. I put it on the market. It's called the Pave Guard system. Um, I started selling it to departments of transportation for their rural bridges, and they were paying for my product, through a sustainable energy portion of their budget.
Mm-hmm.
The federal government would provide the money for it. Well, when they did away with the transportation bill, they did away with that clause in there. So I had to pivot, and I pivoted into the solar market. That's when solar was starting to become on people's minds from a commercial standpoint. And I started a company called SolarLink that ultimately ended up to being MC Power companies. And we started installing solar all across the country. So from California to New York, we've installed solar. I was part of Barack Obama's green team,
Wow.
and I was part of the legislation here in the state of Missouri for to provide net metering. Actually, we have a different type of net metering. We have the net metering that we have is like our investor-owned utility companies. They actually have to have a solar carve out. So I was one of two people who brought solar to our state, and I was the first one to build a solar farm with the utility company, and then it's just gone from there. I built that company, was doing great. Decided that I wanted to do something different, so I asked my partners to buy me out, and I retired a little for a while. And then COVID happened, man. And when COVID happened, my wife was like, "Get a hobby, buddy. Go do something that you like,
Get out of the house.
because you get on my nerves." Uh, I had never been in the residential side of solar, so I got on with a large company. At the time, it was SunPro that ended up being ADT Solar, and I was in management there and got to see what really happens in the solar market. When I first entered solar, there was no financing or anything like that, and we hardly did any residential properties because the costs were way too high. So getting into residential and seeing everything that was there. Kind of got my wins back, but I then started seeing some things that I didn't like. Solar's been good to me and my family, but I started seeing sales reps, lie to customers, not disclose certain things, pressure them beyond compare, um, and that was it. That was the solar game, and I didn't like it, so I decided to start another company to focus on the consumer, actually providing them with a transparent process, and letting them know that we don't represent the installers, we represent you. So we have vetted installers that we work with, and they go through a rigorous vetting process. But we have them, and that's who we recommend to homeowners or business owners, because we know they're going to stand behind their work and they have integrity. But our industry is riddled with people who don't have integrity and trying to make quick cash, and the consumer suffers from it, and our
Mhm.
industry suffers from it.
That's huge. And I mean, that's the number one thing that stands out, right? Is that you're not selling systems or panels, you're consulting for the consumer, like you're on their team. Why is that model so important in today's solar market? I know you touched on it a little bit more, but if you could just elaborate slightly on that.
Well, I think it's extremely important for a transparent process because we're talking about technology. And technology, I'm a 57-year-old man. So if I wasn't in this industry and someone came to talk to me about solar panels on my home, it could be kind of complicated and could be hard to understand. And I would need time to really process that information. Well, the tactics that we have in the industry today, especially from a residential standpoint, is you make an appointment, someone comes to your house, and then they hound you and force you into signing a document. You don't even understand what you're buying yet. So it's very frustrating for me. I would think it's very frustrating for consumers. So I just want to be an advocate for the consumer.
That's fantastic. And I mean, that shows because you've worked with homeowners, you've worked with commercial clients and even school districts, which is massive. What are the
Yes.
most common mistakes that you see people making when they do go solar?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
What are like the most common mistakes that you see people making, when they are going solar, regardless of what,
Yeah.
if they're a homeowner or commercial or even a school district?
Well, one of the biggest mistakes is not doing their homework, not vetting the company. Number one, just taking the salesperson's word for it without the salesperson having to show, hey, this is how it works, this is the way it works. And now there are solar companies out there who don't even give a design. We have software for that, so they don't know the right questions to ask because you're not buying a stove, you're
Hmm.
buying solar power to put on your home or your business. And cost is a big deal, but understanding how solar actually works and how it's going to benefit the consumer, those questions, they don't know those questions, they don't know to ask those questions, and not a lot of solar companies disclose it.
Hmm.
And then when you get a loan, you have solar companies who won't disclose the actual dealer fees. There's been a lot of people who bought solar and then they read the documentation after the fact, and then they realize, well, I'm paying a whole lot more than what I was told I was paying because this information wasn't disclosed.
Hmm.
Um, it's a lot of tricks in the industry that are very frustrating, and that's one of the biggest ones is not disclosing dealer fees. You go to a customer and they want to buy solar and they're only focused on the interest rate. Well, hey, I can get you that lower interest rate, but they don't disclose it's going to cost them an extra 30%
Yeah,
dealer fee. And
fair
that
enough.
and then so like I know, bad what I'm trying to say here, bad experiences, people share those bad experiences, and it's not that salesperson that really gets reprimanded, it's the industry. So then it makes it
Exactly.
harder for everyone else that's out trying to really help people. Solar is good, it's a good thing, um, because you're generating power at the time where power costs the most, and getting people to understand that, and getting them to understand that if they were put their utility bills side by side for the last 5 to 10 years, there's just one trend, and that's going up, and that's not going to
Exactly.
stop. Solar cuts that off at the head, and explaining that to a consumer and getting them to understand that's really important. So you have to slow down what you're saying. You have to ask them, are you tracking? Does this make sense to you? And then going over the equipment and where the solar is supposed to be. One of my saddest things is driving through a city where I see solar installs, and someone's put solar on the north side of the roof. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't understand it. So, um, but it's because there's a lack of understanding from consumers, and there's a whole lot of bad players in our industry, unfortunately.
It's true. You always hear that 5% ruin it for the 95%. And it's always pretty sad seeing how many, especially here in Canada, it's been a pretty big epidemic of a bunch of door-to-door sales. You're getting a system put in for sub 20,000 sometimes, and it's a terrible system. And people obviously don't want to pay a stupid amount for things, but it comes with a level of quality. It comes with a level of service and intent with that. really actually makes the difference, and it has to be done well. And I think that relates, to you, right? Because you talk a lot about protecting clients from deceptive sales tactics. Can you
Absolutely.
walk us through a real life example of where your advocacy changed the outcome?
Yeah, I can tell you. So I installed a solar system for my nephew, and his neighbor had already signed up with another solar company. So when my nephew was really excited, he told the neighbors, "Hey, look, we're going solar too." They asked who he was working with. So my uncle owns a solar company, so we're going with him. So the lady, she asked me to have a conversation with her. So on the phone, she called me, and she was going over her project, and it was relatively the same size project that I was installing for my nephew, but it cost double. I asked her when she was telling me the cost. I was like, that can't be. She told me the equipment she was using. I was like, that simply can't be. And then I asked her, I go, so what interest rate do you have? And she told me the lower interest rate. She told me the lender she was using, and I automatically knew. They did not disclose that there was a 32% dealer fee that, for buying down that rate. And that affects your payment, that affects your overall cost. And because of that, they hadn't installed yet, so she was able to cancel. And we took it from there.
Wow.
But it happens all the time, and that's usually it. It's never the equipment. Most solar companies use pretty much the same equipment. They're pretty, top tier equipment, in phase, all of those different things. So it really does come down to the contract which you sign and the install, the
Hmm.
process of the install. Um,
Exactly.
but most people, unfortunately, do not read the information that's put in front of them to sign until after the fact. So
Hmm.
if this person would have went ahead and got installed and read that after the fact, there would be nothing that they can do. They wouldn't been able to get out of that contract, and they would have to pay that extra amount. The best way to pay for solar, if you're going to lend, is to go the no dealer fee route. They're simple interest loans. You can pay them off at any time with no penalty. So if you, and most people plan to pay it off sooner. So if you're going to do that, why buy that rate down and add an extra 30% plus to your bottom line? Well, there's a little trick in the industry that when some people buy that rate down and it gets them close to what they're paying currently, but they're not looking at the back end. So what we do is we go through the whole process with the consumer. We lay it down. We disclose dealer fees. We disclose all the interest rates that the lender's providing. We tell them what the best route to do, how to best pay for it if they're not paying cash. And we just explain all of that. And then we explain the whole install process to them. So, I'll spend, I don't know, 2 hours, 2.5 hours in a home, and then I'll give a customer time to even think about it because it's a lot to absorb.
Of course.
Yeah.
No, that's massive. And I mean, your services are pretty wide range. You include, proposal reviews, installer vetting, contract negotiation. I'm sure that's just the tip of the iceberg, but which
Yes.
part of that process do your clients find the most eye-opening?
Well, I would say, just our sales process when we're sitting in front of a customer and we're explaining everything to them. Um, uh, uh, Proposal reviews are also eye-opening. I'll tell a customer, hey, listen, go get bids. I'll review them for you. You have no obligation to go with me. Um, but I just want to point out to you because a lot of people, when they look at proposals, and most people get 2 or 3 proposals if they're going to do a solar project. But what they look at is the number. They look at the price, and if the price is lower, then they think they've got a good company. Well, when you go and you compare apples to apples, like I'll give you an example on a home, you should always use microinverters. Well, you still have companies out selling string inverters. Well, you can
Yep.
sell a string inverter with an optimizer, but you're going to have more issues. So the more you add to that system, the more fails that you could have. So and it costs a whole lot more. So with the microinverters, you know exactly what's going on with each panel. You know if that panel is not performing properly, and you can go directly to it, replace it, and move on with your life. Whereas with the string inverter, it's going to take a little bit more, which is going to cost the customer more money if they have to come out and do any kind of repairs to that. So what we do is we try to explain that to the customer as we're going through the process. Here's step 1 to step Z. This is everything that you can expect and then we stand behind it. So when we do an install, one of our representatives are out there with the customer, walking them through what's going on so that they understand what the installers are doing. And then we give them an opportunity to talk to our installers before install, to vet them. So I like to think that we have a pretty good process, but the biggest eye opener is comparing apples to apples. The
Mhm.
bids is very interesting, man. It's very interesting.
Of course. No, I believe it. I mean, another thing that's kind of tying into that, but also that's been in the news and I think been bringing in a lot of attention recently is, the incentives that you have. I mean, I know that you help customers understand financial incentives, tax credits, warranties. How do you stay on top of changing policy, especially with what's going on now? But what should customers be asking when it comes to long-term ROI?
Uh, well, long-term ROI, they should be asking, what's the best way to pay for this? How am I going to get the best bang for my buck? Um, so you have to look at your utility bill, what you're currently paying. You're just gonna take what you're currently paying, you're gonna apply that to your solar, and oftentimes, when that payment's done, your solar's free. In terms of incentives, different states have different incentives, different cities have different incentives. The biggest one is the tax credit, because that's going to give you the most out of your project is 30%. Um, and a lot of people don't understand that. That's another thing that's been lied to consumers. Hey, you're going to get a check back in the mail. It's simply not true. The only ones who get check back in the mail are nonprofits. Nonprofits, they'll get a check in the mail for 30%, but any other consumer, it's a tax credit. And a tax credit is a tax credit. As a solar company, I don't give tax advice. So we always advise customers, talk to your CPA or your accountant before moving forward if you have a question, as if you can take advantage of that tax credit. Now,
Exactly.
with the home, your normal home, it used to be where it would take 20 years to get a return on investment. Now we have return on investments coming in anywhere from 7 to 9 years. That's fantastic
Wow.
for a home. For a commercial project, um, then you have multiple factors. So with the residential, you can only do a tax credit, and then if you have any incentives from the utility company, they'll give you whatever those incentives are. But from a commercial standpoint, you have tax credit and you have accelerated depreciation, which a lot of people don't understand that is a massive incentive, which can turn a ROI to about 2 to 3 years, which is fantastic for commercial.
Wow. Yeah, explain that for us.
Oh yeah, so like you accelerate. So every product, all the equipment that you buy as a company, you can depreciate it. It has a depreciation schedule. Oftentimes those depreciation schedules go up to about 20 years. So you can just depreciate a little bit every year. Well, with solar, you can do 40% of that in depreciation the first year. So if you take that 40% of depreciation and then you take your tax credit at 30%, man, that's a lot of money that's set aside that you don't have to come out of your pocket with as a consumer to go solar. The federal
Exactly.
government also has another program that I hope they don't take away. It's called the REAP program. This is for rural areas and farmers, where the federal government will pay half of that install price. So
Wow.
it's a really good incentives for our farmers and turkey farmers and all these guys who really work hard, but they have massive energy costs. It really just helped them.
That's fantastic. I love hearing things like that because here in Canada it's a huge thing. And we don't have as many incentives, which, is a little bit on the back end, but
Mhm.
hearing that, there's people advocating for it and that governments are giving, up to 50% is massive. But while we're on the topic of trends, what are you seeing right now in the residential or commercial solar space? Are customers, being more cautious or are they more empowered?
Well, I tell you, with all the news going on with incentives going out, I mean, from a solar standpoint, our industry, we create, we say that that's a sense of urgency, but the consumer's not. The consumer's looking at what's going on in the world. They're looking at their energy costs are going up, and they're afraid to pull the trigger. Because if they pull the trigger, if they don't have cash, they take out a loan for solar. If they pull the trigger on that, then they don't know what tomorrow brings. So it really kind of hurts us a little bit. At the same time, if you take your time and you explain to the consumer how this really does benefit them, regardless of where we're at, you're going to have a utility bill. And in most areas, utility company is a monopoly. So
Yep.
if they don't have a choice, you got to go with this company. You got the variable rate. If you don't pay it, they're going to cut you off. So solar makes sense. And then explaining to the consumer the solar curve, when you're generating power, it's you're generating power at the time it costs you the most. Then that's what gets them over the hump. And saying, hey, look, I'm going to flatline your rate. You're not going to have to worry about these variable rates anymore because you're generating power at those times that those rates cost the highest. And from here in the United States, there's demand charges, there's all kinds of different things that go on in the summer. So in 2000, I believe it was 2007, when Obama was in office, he told the EPA no more coal-fired plants, and
Hmm.
every investor-owned utility had to have a renewable energy portfolio. Well, when they stopped building those plants in the middle of the summer, the grid was built to last 150 years. I think we're at 147 years right now. Uh, and they didn't take account for the things that we have, like cell phones, smart TVs, smart computer, all this stuff that needs a lot of power
Yep.
to recharge and to use. They didn't account for that, so the grid is very, very unstable. Well, what the utilities won't tell consumers is that solar is the best renewable energy to pump back into the grid, because the
Hmm.
reason we get those spikes is because of dirty energy, dirty electricity. It's called alternating current, AC, and it
Yep.
spikes. And it spikes when the grid is really stressed, meaning when everyone's using their AC in the middle of the summer, the grid is
Yep.
stressed, so you get the rolling blackouts. Well, with renewable energy, because you're creating or you're generating low voltage, you put the low voltage into the grid, and it acts as a surge protector. So
Hmm.
it eliminates those high spikes. So this is why utility companies are building solar farms. It's helping their grid, but the consumer is paying for it. Um,
Exactly.
you've got these big data centers that are being built. We have one of the largest data centers being built right now in Kansas City that require a tremendous amount of power, right? Well, guess what? That's going to put more strain on our grid. So the more renewables that we can put into the grid, the more stable it'll be. Now, to justify, or I'll just say this. I do feel a little bit bad for utility companies because they are justified in raising their rates during that time, because they can't create energy anymore because of the coal-fired plants. When they're maxed out, they have to go on the open market and buy it. And when they go on the open market and buy it as a commodity, they have to pay 300% more than what they could either create that energy for or bought that energy for if it wasn't during that time. So they
Wow.
are justified in like raising their rates during that time. But solar will eliminate that from a customer having to experience it every year.
That's amazing. That's huge. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like they got to make moves and counter moves in order to stay afloat and, be able to actually pay for things. Especially, you're getting more and more appliances that are taking more and more energy, and nothing's actually slowing down. We need more. We just need more.
That's
And
right.
I mean, there's simple ways to do it, but it's not necessarily cost effective. So, I
Yeah.
mean, in your position, what advice would you give to, a newer solar consultant or installer trying to build trust with their audience?
Just tell the truth. Tell the truth. Be honest,
Straight up.
and understand you're not going to win every deal. Um, but when you have an opportunity to sit in front of a customer, you have a responsibility to advocate the proper way. But here's another disadvantage that we have in our industry. Like some of those larger companies who don't exist anymore, really, but the larger companies, they came in and they put in a model of, if I teach you a pitch, then you can go sell that pitch. You can sell solar, and they were very successful at it. The problem it hurt our industry because those sales reps, most of them didn't have solar themselves. They didn't know how it worked themselves to benefit for their own homes, and they didn't know anything about the industry. Keeping up with industry trends are extremely important. Understanding the regulations that the federal government's putting out constantly. Like for instance, most people don't know the oil and gas companies have been subsidized from its inception, and they make
Hmm.
billions of dollars in profit every year, but they're still subsidized. Whereas our industry is subsidized for now and is always being threatened to take that subsidy away. Yet we create more jobs than oil and gas have for the last decade or more. So
Hmm.
it's the consumer who doesn't understand that, which is why they'll go out and they'll support votes for taking away tax credits. Is because they just don't understand. So for new reps, I will tell them, learn the industry. If you learn the industry, you're going to be a better advocate for solar, and you're going to be better for your customer that you're sitting in front of talking to.
That's amazing. And I mean, it's interesting to think about looking ahead, but let's say we are, how do you see your role evolving as the industry matures? Could like customer or consumer, sorry, advocacy become its own formal segment within solar?
I think it could. I mean, we're going to have to do something the proper way if they take away some of these incentives. But like I've told our guys, number one, we don't sell the tax credit. I mean, tax credit is a part of the incentive that the consumer gets, but tax credit is the least thing that we talk about. We talk about why solar is important, why and how solar can make a difference,
Hmm.
not just for the planet, but in their life personally, and have an effect on their day-to-day monthly budget.
Yeah,
So if you're advocating that way and explaining to them, it just doesn't give you more energy. It eliminates higher costs. Most consumers, with their electric bill, they don't know what's coming in. They don't know if it's going to be high or low. With solar, you know exactly what you're going to be paying. So it
exactly.
it it can really change a budget, and it can really give people freedom. You don't have to worry about this item anymore. You know that this is taken care of because you're generating the power.
That makes sense.
Yes.
That's huge. And in kind of like a segue over to this, how are you getting in front of the customers? How are you putting yourself out there and I guess marketing your services and, really educating people on, the process and what they need to do to honestly just stay safe and not get screwed over?
Well, the one thing we don't do is door knock. I refuse to door knock, and the reason why is because I don't think it's fair to the consumer for someone to show up at their door at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and try to sell them solar. They weren't expecting it, and then those customers who do allow you in and you get them sold, they cancel anyway. So we don't door knock. I can tell you, and being very honest, our most of our customers, probably 95% of our customers, are through referrals because
Wow.
someone has had a good experience. Someone felt like they've talked to numerous solar companies, and we were the one. We educated them. We took our time with them. We provided no pressure, and that goes a long way. So we get a lot of referrals, and then I just signed up for a marketing campaign where we'll use a little bit from our website just to get a hold of people who've gotten a hold of us. But
Mhm.
we haven't had to spend a lot of money on marketing because of the word of mouth. And then
Fair enough.
I'm fortunate enough, like you mentioned, schools are perfect. Schools use a lot of energy, and the utility companies are not friends of theirs, right?
Hmm.
They know they have to pay those energy bills, so they charge them what they can charge them. With schools, I have a firm that I work with. It's a multi-billion-dollar firm that has set some money aside to provide for schools to be able to go solar without any upfront costs. And they go
Wow.
into a purchase power agreement with the school district. At the end of the 25 years, the school district owns the system, and it costs them nothing. They see savings from day one. I can give you an example. I'm working with the school district right now. I'll be presenting to them here soon, and we're going to save them $1 million a year
Wow.
just by
That's
going
huge.
solar. No money out of their pocket. They don't have to pay for any installation. We take care of it all. They don't have to worry about owning it for 20 years. And then at the end of the 20 years, we're going to go back and we're going to replace all the inverters, and they'll have another 20 to 30 years of just income coming in.
That's
And this
fantastic.
is a district that spends about a little over $4 million a year. So saving them $1 million, I mean, that's massive. So that money can go back to teachers' salaries. They can go back to other programs that they can provide. And then one of the things that I also provide for school districts is that I'll write a curriculum for their school district, so students can start learning about solar and how practical it is and how important it is.
That's fantastic. That's a lovely initiative. Has the idea of scaling ever come up? Like, bringing in like a ton more people? Or are you strictly sticking with like the customers and really helping them, do
Sticking with the
exactly what it
customer,
is they
man.
need?
There's a lot of distractions, and there's a lot of things that make you want to, scale that. I've scaled a company before, wasn't fun. I was a part of a company that merged with another company, wasn't fun. Those things aren't fun. I'm in my the stage of my career where I just want to just do consulting and keep it small, but be very, very effective.
Mhm. That's phenomenal. Well, Corey, I really appreciate it. And where can people find more information about what you do?
Hey, they can go to our website at mcsolarkc.com, or they can check us out on Facebook. We're on Facebook as MC Solar as well. So, or they can call us. All that information's on the website. Love to talk to whoever. And listen, you don't have to live in my state for me to do a proposal review. I mean, it's really,
Fair
really
enough.
important. And then one other thing that I want to share with you from a consumer standpoint, I think this is there's two things that we do in a home that are really, really important. One is teach a customer how to read their light bill.
Hmm.
Most consumers don't read it. Most consumers are on, the easy pay thing or whatever. They don't even understand what's coming in. They don't understand how to read all those codes. So we call it kill the bill. We teach customers how to do that and what to look for. And then the other thing that we do is that we do the side by side comparisons. I think that's really important. And then just advocating to the customer that with solar panels, most solar panels degrade less than 1% per year, so it's not the issue there. And then the the inverters, they all have great warranties, but having the right inverter for the right solar panel is really important, and a lot of companies
Exactly.
miss that. You have installers who want to do installs and they want to do it the cheapest that they can do so they can make more profit, and it hurts the consumer. So going over all that stuff with them, and also we also do a walk around. We take the customer outside and we talk to them about the grid. We just do a whole process of educating the customer
Like a
about what
lesson.
they're about to get into.
That's amazing. That's huge, Corey. And I want to thank you again for sharing like the clarity, the transparency, and like your mission with us today. It's an
Yes,
industry that's growing fast, but sometimes too fast. And like voices like yours are, really essential to keeping it honest, thoughtful, and really aligned with the people that, we're supposed to be serving. So for
sir.
anyone listening who's shopping solar, confused by proposals, or wants to make the best possible decision for their homes or their businesses, please reach out to Corey. You can find him, like he said, at mcsolarkc.com. And, for more honest conversations in clean tech, don't forget to subscribe to Off the Grid on the Record on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. So until next time, thank you so, so much, Corey. We really appreciate your time. And
Thank you.
everybody, build smart, stay sustainable, and stay off the grid.
That's what's up. You don't have to lie about solar. All right.